Tropical depression number 4, soon to become tropical storm Debby, is beginning to move into the Gulf of Mexico, and hurricane watches are now in effect. Your forecast across the Caribbean and the Bahamas starts right now.
This is Meteo Mundo.
Hi everyone, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. Nice to see you on a Saturday. Hope you're doing well. Coming up in this video, we're obviously going to deep dive into tropical depression number 4, soon to become tropical storm Debby. We have new watches and warnings, including a hurricane watch now in effect to discuss. We'll look at the impacts across portions of our area and the United States Southeast. Of course, I've got the forecast across the entire area as well. So we'll get started. And again, we're going to take our time. No reason to rush this. I'm going to hopefully cover most of all of your questions. But if you have a specific question about the forecast, that's exactly what the comment section is for. I'd love to hear from you. Drop it in there. While you're down there, of course, let me know where you're viewing from and what the weather has been like. Recording this video Saturday afternoon after the 2 p.m. intermediate advisory. So that's where we're going to start off right now. Let's take a look at what's been happening. Now, if you've been watching my last couple of videos, I told you that basically Thursday, Friday, and into early Saturday was going to be really important for the eventual track of what's going to become Debby in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. It was where the low-level center was trying to consolidate. Well, yesterday, it consolidated south and west of Cuba. So now we're looking at a track that's going to be a little bit farther west, away from southwest Florida a bit, but we'll talk more about that coming up. At this point in time, the center of Tropical Depression 4 is just emerging off the north coast of Cuba. Let me give you the latest stats. Winds are 35 miles an hour. It's not going to be long until we get to 39, and then we have a tropical storm rather than a depression. It's moving west-northwest at 15, pressures 1,009 millibars, 185 kilometers or 115 miles to the south-southwest of Key West, Florida. I want you to note on this infrared satellite imagery and our live lightning data here at Meteo Mundo, as the center has emerged offshore, we're already seeing some lightning develop. This is not good news. Again, it's bathwater just north of Cuba and through the Gulf of Mexico, and already deeper convection is developing as that center moves offshore. Again, we haven't had TD4 get any stronger because of all the land interaction with Cuba over the last 48 hours. But now, as of course the center of circulation moves away, that is not going to be a hindrance, and we're going to get a rapidly intensifying tropical storm and potentially even a hurricane as we move into the later part of this weekend and into early on Monday. Let's take a look at a couple of different satellite images for you here. Going to go over to our visible satellite imagery. Again, beautiful presentation. You can first of all clearly see that this is a lot better organized. We have blow-off cirrus clouds in at least 3 quadrants, kind of north, east, and west. There is a little bit of a dry air impingement on the western side, but again, we're also seeing some deeper convection develop near that center of circulation. So the satellite presentation obviously looks better in a lot of different ways. Back to the infrared satellite imagery and then the water vapor imagery and those deeper blues, that's richer moisture, deeper convection, again, beginning to blow up near the center. And obviously this has been an elongated system. We're going to get into some of the heavier rainfall and some gusty winds that we've had through portions of the Bahamas, Cuba, and southern Florida. But this is the latest track for you right now that takes it up towards the Big Bend. And again, over the last, let's say 24 hours, a fair amount of the models have been shifting it slightly farther off towards the west. So let's look at this from the National Hurricane Center. This is their 2 p.m. intermediate advisory. Next full advisory will be at 5 o'clock. Again, we can see that track. Now look, the Hurricane Center still has Debby making landfall early Monday morning in the Big Bend area, Apalachicola Bay towards the Big Bend, as a tropical storm. But they have issued a hurricane watch because this could easily be either a very high-end tropical storm or even a Category 1 hurricane, because now that farther west track keeps Debby in the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico a little bit longer, and that does matter. If it was skirting up the coastline of the west coast of Florida, it wouldn't be able to have as much of a potential strengthening trend here over the next 48 hours. But the opportunity with TD4 soon to become Debby is going to be there. So let's talk about the new watches and warnings that are in effect. So we'll use my weather computer here. So the areas in orange, that is your hurricane watch. Officially, it's Indian Pass here near Port St. Joe, through Apalachicola Bay, the Big Bend, and then back down towards Yankeetown. We then have a tropical storm warning in the blue for the rest of the west coast of Florida. That would be Yankeetown south to East Cape Sable. Then you have a tropical storm warning for the far western side of the Florida Keys, this area in blue. That is going to be Key West to the 7 Mile Bridge, and it does include the Dry Tortugas. So from the 7 Mile Bridge west to Key West and the Dry Tortugas, and then we actually have a very small sliver of the Middle Keys here that is under a tropical storm watch, and that is going to be 7 Mile Bridge to the Channel 5 Bridge, okay, including Marathon, but not as far into the upper Keys as Island Murata. The bottom line is the Keys could see some tropical storm conditions here over the next 24 to 48 hours, and all of the west coast of Florida is likely to see tropical storm conditions, again, beginning later tonight, in some far southwest areas, even beginning a little bit earlier, and then the potential, if what's going to become Debby can strengthen enough, where we could potentially see some hurricane conditions, again, in the Big Bend area of Florida. All the numbers that you see are wind gusts right now. So let's take a look at what's been happening with TD4 as far as the weather goes. Obviously, it's a very still elongated, sloppy system. We've had numerous heavy showers and storms in portions of the Bahamas, and that rain will continue for us here. I'm going to throw on the radar, and then I'll take off the satellite data for right now. And again, you can kind of see, and let me just make sure that I've got all of it on here. You can see that we've had squally weather for the northwest side of the Bahamas. Walker's Key, Freeport, Lucaya, Abaco, Bimini, Andros. From time to time, we'll get some wind gusts in the 20 to 25 mile an hour range. Look, because it's going to be a slightly farther west track, we're not going to have the more direct impacts in the Bahamas. But that being said, we could still see some 2 to 4 inch rainfall totals over the weekend, locally higher, leading to some localized flooding. We're going to have fairly strong easterly winds. There is a small craft advisory for the open waters of the Atlantic, and really boaters here in the central and the northwest Bahamas need to be paying attention for this squally weather to go along with the downpours and the lightning as well. Obviously, you get a little bit closer to the center and the winds are stronger here in the southeastern sides of Florida towards Miami, and then back down towards Key Largo and Tavernier. 40 mile an hour wind gusts there in Island Murata. We've had some 40 mile an hour wind gusts towards Key West and near the Dry Tortugas. And again, this is all coming in with those spiraling bands moving from southeast to northwest and just bringing in some wet weather for us here. It's not sustained tropical storm conditions as of yet, but obviously the weather is beginning to go downhill. And it's the same thing for the southwest side of Florida as well. Basically, just as we go deeper into this Saturday and into Sunday, the tropical storm conditions will become more apparent, especially along the coast. But look, even well ahead of this, we're going to have some of the outer bands coming in through Orlando and Merritt Island and Brevard County, all the way up towards Jacksonville. It's going to be on and off. It's not going to be consistent, but there will be some heavier rain to go along with that, and a severe weather threat. We're going to be, Florida is on the eastern dirty side of the storm, and that's where we're going to see the opportunity for some rotating storms. So water spouts and tornadoes are a possibility here as, again, what's going to become Debby moves up to the north. I mentioned the ocean temperatures. Let's take a look at the water temperatures here. Those are the numbers in red. I'll drop the other ones off for now. Again, obviously, where we've had some rain, these buoys are going to be a little bit cooler. You can see once the rain moves in, it gets a little bit cooler. But the bottom line is, and I mentioned in yesterday's video, on average in this area, we're looking at upper 80s Fahrenheit, or about 32 degrees Celsius water temperatures in the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There is plenty of fuel and extremely little wind shear for Debby to have to fight. There might be a little bit drier air out here off towards the west, which could try and wrap in, but it's not going to be a guarantee. I'll bring back on the satellite data for us here real quick. There we go. And then if I show you the water vapor imagery, you notice that there's just a little bit drier air here in the central side of the Gulf of Mexico. So as Debby gets stronger and forms, could some of that wrap in? That might be the only limiting factor. But again, with a hurricane watch in place, you get the idea of what we're talking about. Let's take a look at the computer models as far as track. I'm going to throw those on here. These are the main tropical models here, and I'm going to take off again the satellite data. It's just a little bit easier to see. Let me drop off the lightning data as well and go ahead and get rid of all of that. It's just an easier presentation here, guys. Obviously, there's a couple of outliers off towards the west, but at this point in time, we can kind of discount that. If you look at all of the lines that are within that cone of uncertainty from the hurricane center. And again, the overall trend has been a slight shift off towards the west, which means Debby stays in the Gulf a little bit longer, and now landfall is early on Monday, and that is going to play a factor in the forward speed and the movement of Debby once it moves inland into South Georgia and potentially comes back off the coastline of Georgia or South Carolina, but really beginning to put the brakes on with some very heavy rainfall possible. So let's take a look at our global models. This is the GFS deterministic for us here, kind of catching the latter half of this, so we'll let it run and then talk about it. I've got this really slow, guys, so we can take our time and talk about it. So here we go. As we go through our Sunday, this is when we get the center of circulation. It's absolutely plausible that on Saturday we get a tropical storm and then an intensifying storm near the Big Bend early Monday morning. The GFS does take it about that same track you saw from the hurricane center, coming near offshore of the Georgia coastline near Savannah, and then stalling out. And this could be a big problem. First of all, if the center of circulation is offshore and it stalls, it could still continue to gather strength off the Georgia or South Carolina coastline. But even if it's inland, that stalled feature could allow there to be some extremely significant rainfall. So we've got to deal with storm surge and rain here along the west coast of Florida, but then the potential for some extremely high rainfall totals in other areas of the southeast United States down the road into early next week. This is the European model deterministic as well. I want you to notice they are in very good agreement with the track. And I've mentioned this many, many times. Once we have a true center of circulation, now that we do with Tropical Depression 4, the models are pretty darn good at the track, okay? The intensity forecast is where they still lag, especially with these extremely hot ocean temperatures and in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean and the Atlantic. They've really struggled to make these storms as strong as they end up getting. You just have to look back to Beryl and it become a category 5. The European model is weaker and can almost be discounted, to be quite honest. So I agree with the track right now, the European model, but at least going into the Big Bend, it's probably too weak here as a kind of moderate tropical storm at best. Now, obviously, we have all of our tropical models running, friends. I've picked out the HAFS A model. I could have shown you the HAFS B. I could have shown you the ICON, the HBON, the HWRF. They're all different tropical models, but they all have a fairly similar consensus as to the track and the intensity. So this is 8 a.m. on Monday, okay? And it has landfall maybe slightly west of where the hurricane center of the GFS is, but kind of on the western envelope of that cone. And the max winds, and we would see those in the white on the eastern side, of course, because of the cyclonic winds pulling in the storm surge on the eastern side and the heaviest rain and the gustiest winds as well of 70 miles an hour. So the HAFS A is really close to a hurricane on Monday morning. And it's not going to shock me if the trends start pulling more hurricane status over the next 24 hours for Monday morning in this area. Let's go back over here to the computer. I'm going to bring this back out real quick, and then we're going to take a look at, the next thing I want to take a look at is some of the model data on here, guys. So we're going to look at the HER model, and if you haven't done it yet, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button while I'm getting this set up, I appreciate it thoroughly. If you want your latest forecast across the tropics, the daily forecast for the Caribbean and the Bahamas, you found your home here at Meteo Mundo. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel as well. Okay, so in this part of the world, we can look at some high resolution models, and I've got that for you here at Meteo Mundo. This is the HER. It is the high resolution rapid refresh model. It runs hourly. Okay, so again, I'm going to drop off some of this data just because it's a little bit easier presentation. So we're looking at the HER model over the next 48 hours. It's as far out as it goes, as high resolution as it's going to be. I'm going to start off with my friends in the Bahamas. Look, all the way even down into the central Bahamas, we're still going to get brisk south winds and some squally weather. Again, I think 20 to 25 mile-an-hour winds with some higher gusts. I think 2 to 4 inches of rain with locally higher there. Now, obviously, a slightly farther west track has pulled some of the more significant weather away from the Bahamas. That's great news. But if we take a look here at this HWRF model, excuse me, not HWRF, the HRRR, you can see that it's in fairly good agreement with both the GFS and the Euro. It might be slightly closer to the coastline, and certainly on the eastern side of this system, guys, we're going to have some rough weather for places like Port Charlotte and Fort Myers and Bradenton and Sarasota and Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, up the Nature Coast, including my hometown of Crystal River. Yes, I grew up on the west coast of Florida. I know this area very well, guys. And again, into the Big Bend here, all right? And here you go. Looking at the timing, it's a little bit earlier. Still Monday, but a little bit earlier here on the HRRR, but it's right within that hurricane watch, all right? And then moving on shore from there. So at least right now, the major models have this actually making landfall rather than trying to stall out, because that could be another extreme situation if it tries to do so. It's deeper in time. The farther in time into Monday this thing takes to get back in land, the opportunity to stall a little bit close to the coastline becomes a little bit greater. Gonna take a look at the winds. Let's look at the wind gusts. I'm going to loop that up here real quickly as well, and then we can query some of these numbers as well. So these won't be sustained winds, but these will be gusts, and we can take a look at how strong that could be on this HRRR model. So let's get here, and again, whenever I click this button, it jumps time for some reason, so I just have to bring it back. All right, let's take a look at this, guys. We'll look at it together. So again, this is basically like early Monday morning. So we have gusts on the HRRR right approaching hurricane strength. So we are looking at right now in the models, higher end tropical storm or a lower end hurricane, okay? Now for my friends in the Bahamas, if we go back in time and we loop this up, you're gonna see a lot of greens and yellows. And that's gonna be 30, as I said, in a couple of spots. It's not gonna be sustained. They're gonna be gusty, squally, you know, just a rough weekend. You wouldn't want to be out boating, but nothing outrageous. Again, some stronger winds. And again, you get to the yellows, those are gusts 30 to 35. I think it's absolutely plausible. Central Northwest Bahamas. Obviously, places like the Florida Keys, of course, that's exactly what we're going to see move right up the coast. Could have some gusts as Debby gets stronger, beginning to approach 50 plus miles an hour up towards Tampa tomorrow. And you can see that. So as we get towards the reds here, guys, now you're looking at, you know, getting some gusts 50 along the coast and even inland, tropical storm conditions. And it just rides right up the coast and wraps up there right at the very end. Okay. Let's now talk about the models and their intensity. So we looked at a couple of the different ones. These are the tropical models. I want you to notice that the majority of them keep Debby as a tropical storm in the Gulf, but the trend is stronger. And that trend could continue, especially if Debby really gets cranked up here later Saturday. I mean, you know, again, it's TD4. You know I'm talking about Debby because it's not going to shock me at any point in time today on this Saturday that they make it a tropical storm. It is going to be a Debby quickly. Now, this graphic is probably more important than you guys might think. This is the steering flow over the next few days. A couple of things I want to talk about here, okay? First of all, we have a big area of high pressure in the western side of the United States. And you would think, how does that influence Debby? Well, deeper into time, into Monday and Tuesday, the nose of this area of high pressure, the eastern extent, builds in. There's a trough right now over the eastern portion of the United States, including the Appalachians, that is moving offshore. There's also this very weak ridge over the Bahamas. So the initial thinking was Debby is going to go through this weakness and between this area of high pressure, follow this trough and be able to continue with some forward speed. The problem is that trough is moving fast, it's eroding away, and Debby's taking a longer track to get back inland. And so now this ridge and this ridge may be more dominant. And if you look as we get into Monday and Tuesday, friends, do you see how these wind barbs are pointing in that direction? Those are north winds, okay? So as Debby tries to move inland, it's gonna be fighting north and northeast winds, and that's why Debby could slow down or stall over portions of North Florida, Georgia, South Carolina for a few days. All right. That could be a big, big problem. Speaking of problems, we're now going to get into some of the hazards that I expect out of Debby. And we're going to start off with the rain. Again, just a little bit easier here, I think, to drop off just a few of these details. So this is the GFS model. And again, most of the models are in pretty good agreement. And this just takes us out 5 days, guys. So let's take a look at some of the rainfall totals on the GFS model. I'm going to pop these on. And again, you know, I can sit here and I can query these. Sometimes it lets me be able to keep more than one number on at a time. Other times it's not fantastic. It doesn't let me do that. We'll see. I'll start off in the Bahamas. Freeport, Walker's Key, Bimini, as I said, 2 to 4 locally higher. In general, I would expect there for places like Abaco and Eleuthera and New Providence and Andros and into the central and southeast Bahamas. The farther southeast that you go, the lighter the rain totals are going to be, okay? Throughout the entire peninsula of Florida, right? Do we all know our geography? Peninsula, panhandle. For the entire peninsula of Florida, heavy rain, flooding is going to be a risk. Even along the East Coast, we could have several inches of rain. For the Keys, again, I think the GFS is underdoing it a little bit, but remember, Debby's not going to be as strong here, and so the rain is not going to be as persistent. All right? Now it looks like I can start doing this. So again, I'm just going to kind of go up the coast. When we get here, you're looking at 8-9 inches of rain. But even St. Petersburg and Palmetto and Sarasota and Tampa, I mean, Orlando, you know, probably 2 to 4, right, in a lot of areas. Obviously, the heaviest rain is going to be offshore because that's where Debby's going to be until it moves inland. Then you get up towards Citrus County, Crystal River area, about 4.5, 5 inches of rain possible there. Our friends in Cedar Key, you know, it's a little key that sticks out there into the Gulf. I've covered several hurricanes from that location. And here you go, guys. Now we start getting into these bright yellows. And again, east of where the center would come. And now we're getting into really significant rain. And inland as well, right? Lake City and Live Oak, 10, 11 inches of rain. Into southeast Georgia, Woodbine, 10 inches of rain. Jacksonville, 5. And again, this is all just kind of, you know, we want to average this out. But obviously these totals have come up pretty significantly, right? Savannah, a foot of rain. Charleston, a foot of rain. 14 inches offshore. It's going to be a big potential problem for rain if this slows down. Even up towards Myrtle Beach, maybe 6, 7, 8 inches of rain. Sorry about that. So this is going to be a problem, guys. Rainfall along the track, and especially as we get into this area and north, as what will become Debby slows down Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. May not be moving much at all. Another hazard is obviously going to be the sea conditions. I mentioned the Bahamas, the small craft advisory. Look, anywhere in Florida, you're going to want to just be shutting it down for a while here, guys, okay? Obviously, the weekend boating is not fantastic. You can see those wave heights in the well double digits coming up the coast. And then if Debby comes back offshore, right, double-digit waves off the coastlines of Georgia, South, and North Carolina as well. Storm surge could be a little bit more of an issue as well. Storm surge, of course, is water inundation, meaning that the storm is pushing water inland, and that's what it does. So we now have storm surges that are higher than yesterday's advisories, right? From Indian Pass towards the Big Bend, Apalachicola, it's 2 to 4. But for the Big Bend and then back down towards Yankeetown and areas south of even the Nature Coast, it's 3 to 5 feet as a possibility as a peak storm surge, okay? And that's where we actually have a storm surge warning. So if you live in those areas along the coast, Nature Coast, Big Bend, storm surge warning, 3 to 5 feet. 2 to 4 possible for the Tampa Bay area, Charlotte Harbor area, 1 to 3 southwest Florida towards the Card Bridge Sound, and then 1 to 2 for the dry Tortugas. But obviously, water inundation, especially a little bit farther north, and the orientation of the shoreline, it's not great, right? Water's going to really pile up in the Big Bend, especially if Debby's center is just off towards its west. 3 to 5 is now possible. So let's break down kind of everything in general from what I'm thinking, from what the Hurricane Center is thinking. And we're going to put it on one nice little graphic here for you guys. So it's a heavy rain flood threat. It continues for Cuba, where they could get a few more inches of rain. But starting tomorrow morning, Cuba will begin to see conditions get better. The Bahamas, and especially Florida, will continue to see some heavy rain. There is the opportunity in the central and northern portions of Florida, and especially into the southeast United States in general, the areas I mentioned, that we could have some widespread 5 to 10 inches of rain, but locally 15 inches of rain are possible. Hurricane conditions are also possible in parts of Florida. A 3 to 5 foot storm surge as well. Tornado and waterspout threat will come along for the ride in the Bahamas and Florida as well. So that is what I expect. Now, if you're new to Meteo Mundo, during these kinds of events, we actually stream our weather computer, which I was just showing you guys, 24/7. So after you're done watching this video, if you look at the Meteo Mundo homepage or you go to the live tab, look for this thumbnail. And it might be Tropical Storm Debby by this point in time once I get done recording this video. That's how quickly I think we're going to have a tropical storm. But our radar system will be running 24/7. It's a great way to check in and see what's happening now because we have live radar, live satellite, live winds. The hurricane track will update in real time as well when new advisories are issued from the Hurricane Center. So in between these videos, that is a great way to keep up with TD number 4/Debby. And again, if you're new to the channel, we do this as these situations become a little bit more serious. So look out for that. While you're here, friends, again, if you wouldn't mind liking, I'd appreciate this video. Subscribing to Meteo Mundo. Thank you for sharing this with your family and friends. If you've gotten anything out of it, just doing those 3 things would be a big favor to me, and I appreciate it. Thank you for supporting me here at Meteo Mundo. Our friends who are members, 99 cents a month. The super thanks, the PayPal, the Venmo that you see in the description below. So again, this weather computer will be running 24/7, if you will, through the event of Debby, unless I'm recording a video or I'm on live, which, by the way, is a possibility as well. If you guys watch me during Barrel, when it was needed, I jumped on and we did some really long live streams, but it was great to have that interaction with you guys and to keep you up to date in real time. So again, I'll talk about the coverage plans coming up here into Sunday and early Monday as well. So that is the newest information with TD4/Tropical Storm Debby, and I hope we don't go beyond that. Let's get into the forecast for the rest of our friends in the Caribbean. All right. So on this Saturday, nice tropical wave is moving into the Windward Islands right now in the Lesser Antilles in general. Showers, a few storms are beginning to break out. Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, all with the opportunity for some good rain. Not everyone's going to get it, and not everyone on the island is going to get it, right? I mean, a lot of you have commented lately, Rusty, I lived in this part of Barbados, I had heavy rain. Rusty, I live in this part of Barbados, I hardly saw a drop. Obviously, it's going to be very area dependent, but the chances begin to grow higher as well. Switch over to the visible satellite imagery, and you can see some of those clouds coming in. The winds are going to be picking up a bit. Dominica and Guadeloupe, Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Bartholomew, Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, as I said, and then over towards St. Thomas, St. Croix, St. John. We're going to get some showers developing in the U.S. and the British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, but the moisture quality with this wave is a little bit better farther off towards the south. Go back over to the enhanced satellite imagery here. We're going to see better rain chances for places like Suriname and Guyana and Venezuela. My friends in the ABC Islands, maybe not today, but over the next couple of days, your rain chances will be going up as well. Now, I don't expect this wave to develop, but there are multiple additional tropical waves that we're going to have to be monitoring. So you kind of have this weaker one here, but then early next week, here comes this one. This one, still not really showing any signs of potential development, although we have to keep an eye out. But here's another very strong wave coming off of the West African coast. And remember, the Saharan dust is now not nearly as concentrated in the main development region of the Atlantic. So I hate to tell you guys, if you notice that these moisture fields are already becoming better organized with these waves as they move from east to west, these will all need to be watched, especially this one here, for a little bit better opportunity for further development as we get into the first full week of August. Back over to the enhanced satellite imagery. Other areas that we've had some showers and storms for today include portions of the Yucatan, down towards Central America, our friends in Belize City. A few storms there, San Pedro, on over towards Belize, Roatan there on the northern coastline of Honduras. A few more additional storms in those regions. Our friends in Jamaica have been drying out. We say we take a look at temperatures, guys, because one thing you all have told me is, Rusty, when it's not raining, it has been exceptionally hot. These are going to be the feels like numbers, approaching 110 in Kingston. That's 43 degrees Celsius when you get up to 110. Can you tell where there's heavier rain? It's really, really rough right now in Hispaniola. It's been a pretty rough day here as well. Ponce 108 in Puerto Rico. Few storms developing on the northwest side of the island, but they're going to be isolated in nature. Okay, let's look at the rainfall potential across our area here. So I'm going to bring on the GFS. It's going to take me just 1 second to get this loop back up, guys. Find the reflectivity. And we'll go out 5 days and loop this up. So obviously, here we've already talked about it, but we can talk about it a little bit further. The GFS, again, wraps up Debby and then really puts on the brakes, just kind of spinning Debby. And notice that these plot points from the Hurricane Center are very close to each other, okay? These plot points are so close. I think I can queer them even here. Maybe not. No, I can't. But, you know, these are 12-hour plot points. Yeah, here we go. Now, again, it's not going to show you the right time, unfortunately, but you get the idea that how close these are to each other. And that's going to be a big problem for maybe Northeast Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina if this does this. Sits offshore, A, continues to at least probably hold its strength, not weaken much, but also just spin in more and more rain. The Bahamas will start to see improving conditions beginning on Monday. Will be relatively dry in the Western Atlantic, the Western Caribbean. Few scattered showers for the Yucatan and Central America. This is going to be the next big tropical wave, as I mentioned, coming in, especially through the Windward Islands, but all the Lesser Antilles will be tracking up north and west. So eventually, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba will all get back into better rain chances by midweek. And again, that's not the only game in town. There'll be more tropical waves in this main development region that will bring wind and rain and the opportunity for further tropical development as well. Friends, you can find me across all social media. I appreciate you guys. Instagram, TikTok. We're on X, Facebook. You want to send me a picture or video, myMediaMundo@gmail.com. Again, as of the 2 p.m. advisory on this Saturday, we have Tropical Depression number 4, soon to become Tropical Storm Debby. Forecast to become a very, very high-end tropical storm, but the potential to become a hurricane, which is why hurricane watches are now in effect for the Big Bend of Florida. Based on the timing right now, landfall would be early on Monday. Again, friends, remember, look for our 24/7 radar to be streaming live. Check in with that. I will be keeping you constantly updated, I promise you that. So I'll be back soon with the latest video update on Debby and the rest of the forecast. Thanks for tuning in, friends. Thanks for likes and subscribing. And I'll see you soon right here at Meteo Mundo.